We are starting this journey in the absolute agricultural heartland of Alaska, located on Trunk Road in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, just outside the town of Palmer. Go ahead and start heading north. We have a long, incredibly scenic, and deeply historic drive ahead of us today. We are going to transition from the flat, sprawling, fertile farmlands of the valley floor, drive through the dense, barren-habited boreal forests, and trace the path of the rushing little Susitna River right up to the rugged, towering base of the Talkeetna Mountains. As we pull out onto Trunk Road and get up to speed, take a look at the landscape out your windows. If you are used to driving in the lower 48 states, this might look like a fairly standard, rural farming community. You see wide open fields, red barns, wooden fences, and patches of thick forest. But farming in this specific valley is anything but standard. You are driving through the site of one of the most desperate, audacious, and wildly successful agricultural experiments in American history. To understand the fields you are passing, we have to go back to the year 1935. The United States was suffering through the absolute darkest, most crushing depths of the Great Depression. In the Midwestern states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, the economy had completely collapsed. A devastating drought had ruined the soil, and thousands of hard-working, multi-generational farming families were facing absolute starvation and complete financial ruin. They had lost their land, their equipment, and their hope. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his New Deal administration came up with a radical, unprecedented, and highly controversial plan to save a select few of these families. They decided to take 203 of the most desperate, impoverished farming families from the Midwest, put them on trains across the country, load them onto steamships in Seattle, and relocate them thousands of miles north to this exact, untamed valley in the remote territory of Alaska. The federal government promised them 40 to 80 acres of uncleared, wild land, a basic house, and the chance to start their lives over completely from scratch. Imagine the absolute shock of arriving here. When those families stepped off the train right here in Palmer in May of 1935, they did not find welcoming farmhouses or neatly plowed fields. The government bureaucracy was completely unprepared for the brutal reality of the Alaskan wilderness. There were no houses built. The families, including pregnant women and small, terrified children, were forced to live in a muddy, sprawling city of canvas tents while it rained constantly for weeks. The environment was completely alien and entirely hostile. The mosquitoes were apocalyptic, rising from the damp, ancient earth in suffocating, blinding clouds. They had to frantically race against the clock. They had to physically hack down massive, ancient spruce trees by hand, using draft horses and highly dangerous dynamite to clear the massive, deep-rooted stumps from the earth. They were desperately trying to build log cabins before the lethal, freezing Alaskan winter arrived to claim them. It was a scenario of extreme, unimaginable hardship. The winters were brutally cold, dropping to 40 degrees below zero. The isolation was crushing, and many families simply could not handle the sheer terror and the backbreaking labor of the wilderness. Dozens of families gave up, broke down, and fled back to the lower 48 on the first boats they could afford. But the ones who stayed, the stubborn, incredibly resilient, hard-headed pioneers who fought the land and won, fundamentally changed the trajectory of this state forever. You are driving past the legacy of their survival. We are continuing north on Trunk Road, approaching a series of modern roundabouts. Navigate through the traffic circles, taking the exits to stay northbound on Trunk Road. These roundabouts are a very modern addition to a very old landscape, a sign of how rapidly the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, known locally as the Mat-Su, is growing. Thousands of people have moved out here to escape the dense urban bowl of Anchorage, seeking larger plots of land and a quieter way of life. As we drive these long, straight stretches, let us talk about what those desperate colonists actually discovered when they finally cleared the trees. They found that the soil beneath their boots, composed of rich, wind-blown glacial lush, was incredibly fertile. But the real magic, the thing that defied all traditional agricultural logic and made this valley world famous, was the sky above our vehicle. Because we are situated so incredibly far north on the globe, this valley receives nearly 20 hours of direct, relentless, blazing sunlight a day during the absolute peak of the summer. That endless midnight sun causes the crops to grow at a frantic, almost terrifying rate. The plants literally do not sleep, they photosynthesize around the clock in a desperate, biological rush to mature before the killing frost returns in the early autumn. Because of this endless light, this valley produces absolute mutant, giant vegetables. If you were to drive a few miles away from here to the Alaska State Fairgrounds in late August, you would see the mind-blowing results of this bizarre agricultural anomaly. We are talking about massive heads of green cabbage that weigh 138 pounds and are the size of a love seat. You would see cantaloupes the size of beach balls, and carrots that look like heavy wooden baseball bats. The colonists took a desperate, muddy gamble in a freezing wilderness and successfully turned this valley into the thriving, giant vegetable-producing breadbasket of the last frontier. Keep your eyes on the road, but take a moment to look at the massive peaks dominating the skyline in your rearview mirror and out the side windows. To the south and east, you are flanked by the towering, jagged peaks of the Talkeetna Mountains. The most prominent mountain looming over the valley floor is Pioneer Peak. It rises over 6,000 feet almost straight up from the sea-level tidal flats. It is a massive, dark, brooding pyramid of rock that dictates the weather in this valley. In the winter, the fierce, hurricane-force Nick winds funnel down from those glaciated peaks, sweeping across these flat farmlands and creating blinding, white-out ground blizzards that can flip semi-trucks right off the highway. We are coming up to a major intersection. We need to make a left turn onto the Palmer-Fishhook Road. Go ahead and safely make that turn, and settle in. This is the road that will take us the rest of the way to our destination. As we turn onto Palmer-Fishhook, the entire character of the drive begins to shift. We are leaving the wide-open, sun-drenched agricultural fields behind and pointing our hood directly toward the massive, imposing wall of the Talkeetna Mountains to the north. As we drive this initial stretch of Palmer-Fishhook, notice how the dense forest immediately begins to crowd the edges of the asphalt. We are entering the boreal forest, also known as the taiga. This is the largest land-based biome on planet Earth, a massive, continuous ring of coniferous forest that stretches across the entire northern hemisphere. The trees lining the road are predominantly black spruce, white spruce, and paper birch. Look closely at the spruce trees. You might notice that they do not look like the massive, towering redwoods or Douglas firs of the Pacific Northwest. They are often thin, scrawny, and sometimes leaning at strange, chaotic angles. This is because they are growing in an incredibly harsh, unforgiving environment. Beneath the thin layer of topsoil here, there is often a layer of permafrost, ground that remains permanently frozen year-round. The tree roots cannot penetrate the solid ice, so they have to spread out wide and shallow, creating a very weak anchor. When the top layer of soil thaws and turns to mud in the summer, the trees begin to lean and tilt in all directions, creating what locals call a drunken forest. You must remain absolutely vigilant as we drive this stretch of road. This dense forest is completely alive, and the animals here do not recognize the authority of the asphalt. Keep your eyes constantly scanning the shadows between the trees, the deep ditches, and the shoulders of the road. This specific corridor is notorious for massive urban moose. A fully grown Alaskan moose is a staggering, prehistoric-looking animal. A large bull can stand over 7 feet tall at the shoulder, carrying antlers that span 6 feet across, and weigh over 1,400 pounds. They are incredibly dark, which makes them almost entirely invisible at night until they step directly into your headlights. Their legs are so long that if you strike a moose with your vehicle, the bumper takes their legs out, and the entire 1,400-pound body of the animal crashes directly through the windshield and into the passenger cabin. It is one of the most deadly hazards of driving in Alaska. If you see a moose on the side of the road, you do not just tap the brakes, you stop completely and let them cross. They are completely fearless, highly unpredictable, and will not hesitate to charge a moving vehicle if they feel threatened. As we continue up Palmer-Fishhook, you might start to notice the terrain subtly rising. The road begins to follow the natural contours of the land, weaving and undulating as we push closer to the foothills. Roll your window down just a crack if the weather allows it. Breathe in the air. As we leave the farmlands behind, the smell of the air changes. It becomes sharper, cleaner, and carries the distinct, earthy scent of damp moss, decaying birch leaves, and the faint, icy chill of distant glaciers. We are now paralleling the path of the Little Susitna River, which is flowing hidden in the woods just to our right. The Little Sioux is a legendary body of water in this state. It originates high above us, pouring directly out of the melting, ancient face of the Mint Glacier deep in the Talkeetna Mountains. It carves its way down through the granite, cutting a massive, sweeping valley before slowing down and winding its way through the forests we are currently driving through. If you were to pull over and walk down to the banks of the Little Sioux right now, you would not see a crystal-clear, babbling mountain brook. You would see a roaring, opaque, dark gray torrent of water. It is colored by glacial flour, microscopic rock dust created by the crushing weight of the glaciers grinding against the granite mountains overhead. This fine dust stays suspended in the freezing water, completely obscuring the bottom. Despite the freezing temperatures and the opaque water, the Little Susitna River is an absolute superhighway for one of the most incredible biological migrations on the planet. In the late summer, starting in July and peaking in August, this river is completely choked with wild Pacific salmon. King salmon, silver salmon, and chum salmon swim thousands of miles from the deep waters of the Pacific Ocean, navigating past seals, killer whales, and massive commercial fishing nets. They enter the Cook Inlet, find the mouth of this exact river, and begin a grueling, agonizing journey upstream, fighting against the massive, rushing current of the glacial runoff. They are driven by a singular, overriding biological imperative, to return to the exact same stretch of gravel where they were born, lay their eggs, and then die. It is a beautiful, tragic, and utterly necessary cycle. When the salmon are running, the banks of the Little Sioux become the busiest, most dangerous places in the forest. Fishermen line the banks, casting heavily weighted lures into the dark water. But they are not the only ones fishing. Massive brown bears and black bears descend from the high mountains and gather along this river to feast. A large grizzly bear needs to consume tens of thousands of calories a day in the late summer to build up the thick layer of fat required to survive a 7-month winter hibernation in a dark, freezing den. The salmon are the ultimate, nutrient-dense prize. The bears will wade directly into the freezing rapids, using their incredible speed and razor-sharp claws to snatch the exhausted fish right out of the current. They will drag the salmon into the woods, often eating only the most calorie-dense parts, like the skin and the brain, and leaving the rest of the carcass to rot on the riverbank. This decaying fish matter acts as a massive, natural fertilizer, injecting vital ocean nutrients directly into the root systems of these massive spruce and birch trees. The entire ecosystem of this forest is entirely dependent on the death of those incredible fish. We are continuing to follow Palmer-Fishhook Road deeper into the valley. The trees are starting to thin out just slightly, and the road is beginning to wind and twist more aggressively. We are leaving the flatlands completely behind and entering the lower reaches of the mountain pass. Look straight ahead through the windshield. The Talkeetna Mountains are finally revealing their true, terrifying scale. They are not gentle, rolling, forested hills. They are violent, jagged, towering monoliths of solid gray granite that look like massive teeth tearing into the sky. The sheer rock faces are often completely devoid of vegetation, scoured clean by the brutal, howling winds and the constant, crushing avalanches of the winter. These mountains were not carved by rivers. They were carved by ice. During the Pleistocene epoch, the last major ice age, this entire region was buried under a massive, continental ice sheet. The valley we are driving into right now was filled with a glacier that was hundreds, possibly thousands, of feet thick. It moved like a slow, unstoppable, grinding bulldozer, carving out the massive, wide, U-shaped valleys that define this mountain range. When the climate warmed and the massive ice sheets finally retreated, they left behind this sweeping, dramatic landscape, littered with massive granite boulders called glacial erratics that were simply dropped onto the tundra when the ice melted beneath them. As we drive this winding, incredibly scenic road, I want you to think about the people who carved this route out of the wilderness. Long before the state paved this road, painted the yellow lines, and installed the guardrails, this was a treacherous, muddy, highly dangerous supply trail. In 1906, a tough, solitary prospector named Robert Hatcher fought his way up the Little Susitna River. He was pushing deep into uncharted, brutal territory, fighting off clouds of black flies, crossing freezing rapids, and constantly watching for aggressive bears. He was looking for gold. But he did not just find loose, shimmering flakes swirling in a stream bed. He climbed high up into the alpine tundra above us and found exactly what every prospector in history dreams of finding. He found the source. He discovered massive, glowing veins of gold-laced quartz jutting right out of the solid, unforgiving granite of the mountainside. His discovery sparked an absolute corporate frenzy. But getting the gold out of the Talkeetna Mountains was not like the famous gold rushes of the Klondike or Nome, where men used simple pans and sluice boxes in the mud. This was hard rock mining. The gold was locked deep inside the solid mountain, and the only way to get it out was to literally blow the mountain apart. They needed massive, heavy industrial machinery. They needed tons of volatile dynamite, massive stamp mills to crush the rock, thousands of feet of heavy iron rail, and hundreds of tough, desperate men willing to swing pickaxes in the dark. But before they could blast the mountain, they had to get all of that heavy equipment up there. And that is where the road we are driving on comes in. The Palmer-Fishhook Trail was the absolute lifeline of the Independence Mine and the other gold camps operating high up in the pass. In the 1930s, massive, primitive tractors pulling heavy, reinforced wooden sledges would fight their way up this exact route. In the summer, the road was a bottomless, swallowing bog of glacial mud. The tractors would sink to their axles, and the men would have to use winches and sheer brute force to pull them out. In the winter, the road was a terrifying, icy gauntlet, constantly threatened by massive avalanches that could bury a supply train in seconds. The men who drove those supply trains were a special breed of tough. They drove through blinding, white-out blizzards, sitting in unheated, open-air tractor cabs, risking their lives every single day just to keep the mines fueled and the men fed. When you feel the road curve and climb beneath our tires, think about the sheer, agonizing effort it took to conquer this valley before modern engineering existed. As we push further up the road, the elevation continues to rise. The air outside the car is getting noticeably colder, and the dense, dark spruce forest is beginning to give way to smaller, more resilient alpine vegetation. We are getting closer to the tree line, the invisible boundary on the mountain where the climate becomes so incredibly harsh, the soil so thin, and the winds so violent that trees simply can no longer survive. If you are driving this route in the summer, the landscape is breathtakingly beautiful. The sun is shining, the road is clear, and the views open up majestically with every single switchback. But I want you to close your eyes for just a second and completely change the season in your mind. Imagine driving this exact stretch of Palmer-Fishhook Road in the absolute dead of January. The vibrant green leaves are gone. The dark asphalt is completely buried under a thick, permanent layer of polished, white ice. The temperature outside the vehicle is hovering at 25 degrees below zero. The snowpack in the woods to your left and right is 6 feet deep. The sun, if it comes up at all, barely crests the southern horizon, casting long, eerie, purple shadows across the frozen landscape before plunging the valley back into crushing darkness after just a few hours. The wind howling down from the glaciers above hits the car with terrifying force, carrying a blinding ground blizzard of razor-sharp ice crystals that scour the paint off the hood. In the winter, this road is not a scenic drive, it is a battle for survival. The state transportation crews work relentlessly, using massive rotary snowplows to keep the corridor open for the few brave souls who live up here year-round. If you slide off the road and into a snowbank out here in the winter, the heater in your car will only run as long as you have gasoline. When the engine finally dies, the interior of the vehicle will drop to sub-zero temperatures in less than an hour. Driving up here in the dark months requires absolute preparation. You do not leave the house without a heavy, sub-zero sleeping bag, chemical heat packs, extreme weather gear, and a shovel in the trunk of your car. It is a completely different, infinitely more dangerous world. But that extreme winter darkness also brings one of the most spectacular, awe-inspiring phenomena in the natural world. Because we are driving away from the light pollution of Palmer and Anchorage, this dark, winding road offers a perfect viewing gallery for the aurora borealis. On a clear, freezing winter night, the sky above these jagged granite peaks will suddenly explode with massive, shifting, shimmering curtains of neon green, vivid violet, and deep, bloody red light. The northern lights dance across the stars, reflecting off the pristine white snowpack and illuminating the entire valley in a ghostly, silent, unearthly glow. It is an experience so profoundly beautiful and overwhelming that it instantly makes you forget the terrifying cold. We are continuing our steady, winding climb up the Palmer-Fishhook Road. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started in the historic, desperate, muddy farmlands of the Matanuska colony, where pioneers fought starvation to build a breadbasket out of the frozen earth. We drove through the sprawling, modern roundabouts that mark the rapid expansion of the valley. We crossed into the dense, ancient boreal forest, keeping a vigilant watch for the massive, unpredictable moose that rule the shadows. We traced the path of the glacial Little Susitna River, imagining the frantic, exhausted push of the wild salmon and the massive bears waiting on the banks. And now, we are driving directly into the shadow of the imposing, ice-carved Talkeetna Mountains, following the grueling, historic supply routes of the early gold miners who sought to blow the granite apart to extract its wealth. You have driven through a living, breathing cross-section of Alaskan history, geology, and raw wilderness. We are approaching the final mile of our designated route today. The road is going to continue to wind, following the natural curve of the mountain base. Keep your speed steady, and enjoy the profound, increasingly isolated silence of the valley. We are arriving at our destination coordinate, 17288 Palmer-Fishhook Road. As you prepare to slow down and pull over, take a final, deep breath. Look at the towering peaks ahead of you, and the wild, rushing river below. You are standing right on the threshold of Hatcher Pass. If you were to continue driving, the road would turn to gravel, climb above the tree line into the sweeping alpine tundra, and take you to the haunting, beautiful ruins of the Independence Mine. But for now, you have reached the end of this leg of the journey. Put the vehicle in park, turn off the engine, and listen to the wind blowing through the spruce trees. Thank you for making this long, incredible drive with me, and enjoy the raw, unfiltered beauty of the Alaskan wilderness.